Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pash On Podcast. Let's get started with your host, Brian Pash.
Hi, this is Brian Pash, and welcome to another podcast. On today's show, we have Mike Cavanaugh. He's the Executive Vice President at MAXDigital. We're going to talk about their tools, strategies, and approach to helping dealers create a modern retail experience. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I appreciate being here.
Michael, for people who are not familiar with MAXDigital, although I would find it hard to believe, but let's just say there's a few who don't, how long has the company been in business, and what was the first product that really grabbed dealers' attention from your development team?
Well, Brian, we've been around for about 15 years, and we started off in the inventory management space with a tool called First Look. So that was one of the first tools that we had on the market. We were a pioneer in inventory management, pricing, appraisal, merchandising, and we've grown a bit through the years. And we got into the merchandising realm, which then led into the digital retailing realm before we really started calling it digital retailing even. But we've been in that space for about 4 years now, pretty consistently. But it's great company, been around for quite a while now.
Wonderful. So let's talk about one of your most popular tools, your digital showroom tool. I just recently purchased a car, and I'd like you to address how your product solves the challenge I had. First, I was looking at a Chevy Traverse, and I really didn't know too much about the car other than seeing it once and was looking for a 7-passenger SUV. And one of the hard things is trying to figure out which trim level had leather and wasn't part of some deluxe package, meaning what's the entry-level model that would have leather, because that was important, but I didn't need all the other bells and whistles. To tell you the truth, there was really nothing on the Chevy dealer websites in my local market that gave me any of that information. It was frustrating, so I had to call a friend and get that information from them. Mike, tell us about the digital showroom tool. I know that it provides consumers with really unparalleled access to information about the vehicle and vehicle comparisons, but could you give us a top-level overview, and then we'll dive into some questions about the product?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brian. And your experience there is a common experience that a lot of consumers have. And I myself was just looking for a truck, and I went through a very similar experience. So the experience is fresh in my head to share with you as well. So our digital showroom tool was developed to really build off of what we come to have as some really core competencies with merchandising, with market data, and really the specifics of the options, the packages, the details past the trim level of that vehicle. To help you understand as a consumer on the website, when you're looking at a VDP and you're looking at the details, to understand what exactly that car has, and not only what options and packages it has, but how did that affect the MSRP of that car? What were each of those packages worth? And how does that make this vehicle unique from a value perspective as well? So our digital showroom tool integrates with a lot of data from OEMs across the country. And it helps equip the consumer on the website and then the salesperson in the store, as well as a BDC agent in the store, if a dealership has a BDC, to become instant product experts. Because oftentimes consumers are shopping for so many cars, they're looking for things, maybe they're evident on the website, maybe they're not as evident as they need to be, but they end up calling or emailing a representative from the dealership, and they ask that question. We see this all the time in the research that we do. That these are common questions, like you asked, did this vehicle have leather? I was looking for a truck that had navigation and had steps on the side to get in the vehicle. I wanted to know if any of them had that already or if I needed to purchase it as an aftermarket option. And I was looking for a very specific color combination as well. So some of the things that, our tool, Digital Showroom, helps you do is not only understand, does this have the right options and packages that I'm looking for on the vehicle, but also how does this vehicle how is it priced in comparison to the rest of the market? So right on that tool, whether you're a consumer on the website or whether you are a salesperson or, again, a BDC agent, you can click one button and you can see the comparison, the market comparison on that car. And you can send that link to the customer if they aren't already looking at it on your website, so that they don't have to go back to that third-party website with all of the other dealerships' inventory on it and then look to make those comparisons themselves. You can share that with the consumer directly via your website or via one of your representatives.
Now, Mike, I'm not an expert on inventory management, but there are a few folks in my industry circles that have made comments like the majority of cars are not properly described on third-party portals or even on the dealer's website. And I said, hold on, why is that the case? And some people say, well, they don't put the right op codes into the DMS. And so, the build data isn't available, properly. So it is relying on the dealer to do the work. In 2019, Mike, what would you assess for people who are not using your tool? What percentage of the syndicated cars that are shown on a Cars.com, Auto Trader, or Car Gurus, or Edmunds, or even on the dealer's website are properly decoded and described as they should be?
So I think this is a matter of opinion, but I'll give you my opinion as well. Is that I think properly decoded and described online means that every piece of information that somebody could want to know about that vehicle is properly described. Anything you would see on a build sheet, on a Monroney label on a vehicle is properly displayed on the website. And I think what happens over time is that folks tend to choose what they think is a high value option, a high value package, something that somebody's interested in, but you never know what one of those consumers is specifically looking for. And if they don't see it, the assumption is that it doesn't have it. And I think we forget that oftentimes because we live in the dealership world every day, and we assume that, well, it's common knowledge that this is a standard option on this vehicle, but it's not common knowledge. And if we don't take the responsibility to educate the customer, then they're not going to know. And when you look into people starting to search for, a Chevy Equinox with leather, if you don't have that anywhere in the vehicle description or anywhere on that page, it's likely not going to come up. So I think it's probably less than 50% from the dealers that I see across the country. If I just use a sample set of all of the dealers that I've seen in the last 6 months that weren't using our tools for merchandising, I would say it's less than 50% of the dealers actually have accurate descriptions on their vehicles that have all of the options, even some of the high value options and packages properly listed on their sites.
It's so funny you mentioned that because I ended up getting a Honda Pilot Touring. And again, on the websites I was looking at, it was very interesting. I was told, well, look, the Pilot has 7 seats and the Touring is the one that has bucket seats on the second row. But I could not find a single listing description on the car I selected that said, hey, this edition, the Touring edition, has the bucket seats, which is absolutely a requirement for the second row, and the total number of seating. It just was not clear. I had to call a Honda dealer. So if this is the case, Mike, if only 50% of the dealers are truly disclosing, isn't it kind of crazy that we talk about digital retailing, which assumes the consumer can find a product with a selling price to, move down the purchase path, but maybe we need to clean up our merchandising before we ever can expect a consumer to feel comfortable on their own to start penciling their own deal.
You're 100% right, Brian. And I think this is lost a lot because we get caught up in the world of shiny objects and, we're looking for quick solutions and, the silver bullet that's going to help us sell a lot of cars. We look for something that's new, exciting, and flashy, but we neglect the core principles that need to be there and really the strong foundation. If you think about it like a house, if you've got terrible merchandising and you don't have, high quality pictures, if you don't have pictures of those leather seats and pictures of those bucket seats in the second row, or pictures of the moonroof or the navigation like I was looking for with the map up, if you don't get some of those basics right, which is really all merchandising, you're not going to see the results that you want to see from some of these amazing digital retailing tools that are on the market right now, because there's plenty that I think are great out there. But if the dealer doesn't have those foundations really solid and the processes are not in place, in order to make sure that those are done consistently, then I think a lot of the efforts are for naught.
Well, let's relate it to something outside of automotive. I remember a year or two back, I needed to get a new digital SLR camera, and I was looking at some of the cheaper kind of Canon, I think it was Vixia, and all those kind of before you went up to a full DLSR. It was so interesting. On Amazon, I only could find like 2 models out of 50 in kind of the low cost camcorder that said it had an audio output jack, right? Because that's really important to have an audio input and output jack, especially if you're doing some recording or using a remote mic. And I remember it's like, man, is it true only 2 camcorders have a microphone in jack so I could use an external mic? And I was like, wow, that doesn't seem right. Just like the cars. I knew what I was looking for. I just couldn't verify it online. So I'm glad we brought up this merchandising piece because honestly, out of all the interviews we've done, no one has brought up the fact that digital retailing depends on a consumer being able to feel comfortable that the car they're selecting will meet their needs. But if the descriptions aren't there, if the features aren't there, it's really hard for them to click on a buy now or customize my payments button if they have no clue if that's the right car for them.
Correct. I mean, I think that's where we put the cart before the horse a little bit. Is, you've got to put the time, effort, and energy into making sure vehicles are merchandised properly before you can be successful in digital retailing. And I can say, because we've been, road tested with some of the biggest dealer groups in the country, and they've chosen us for a lot of their different projects, I get to spend a lot of time with these groups. And I was at one of the biggest dealership groups in the country last week, and I got to see they had a team of people that were responsible for merchandising their vehicles at all of their stores across the country. That was their only job every day, was to make sure that all of those high value packages and options were on the vehicles. They were spot checking to make sure that if there was something that said that it had a sunroof, that there was a picture of that. If it said it had the leather seats, there was a picture of that, and they were in sequential order that matched up how it read in the description to make the experience good for the consumer. So the level of detail that goes into merchandising with some of the largest, most successful dealer groups in the country, I think should be proof that a regular, standalone dealership, if you're not putting that same level of detail in there and you just have your outsourced guy that comes once every week or every 2 weeks, or the new, lot porter that's on there that, barely knows how to use a camera and he's the one that's responsible for it, you're really doing yourself a disservice, because one of the sayings that you probably hear often, it's one of my favorite now, is that online is the new front line, and years ago we would never put, a dirty car, or a car that wasn't reconditioned on the front line ready for customers to see when they drove past our dealership. So why would we put a vehicle online that, translating it into these terms, this is really a dirty, non-reconditioned car. If it doesn't have all of these packages and options clearly displayed, if it doesn't have pictures of all of these things at a minimum for a consumer to engage with, then you can't expect them to feel comfortable enough to go to that next stage where they say, yeah, let's buy now. Let's see what the payment looks like on this car. They're not ready because they haven't determined the key thing yet is this vehicle right for me? And I think that's what's missed.
Totally agree. Now, another piece of the process or roadmap to create a modern retail experience is to give a consumer a better idea of their trade. And whether this is done online or in the showroom, everyone's talking about building trust. Instead of just pulling a number out of the air and getting in a defensive argument with a consumer who thinks their car is worth more, part of a modern retail experience, which takes less time to purchase a car, has to include streamlining the trade-in process. Mike, let's talk about MaxMyTrade and how it differentiates itself from the other half a dozen trade tools that are on the market.
Great. I'd be happy to share some insights here. So MaxMyTrade is a relatively new tool that we released. We developed it last year. We beta tested it at several of our closest stores for about 6 months, and then we just released it at NADA. And we've already seen some pretty mass rollouts with this tool at some of the largest groups in the country. And the reason that this tool has been adopted and people are excited about it is it's very practical and it makes sense to people, and it provides ROI that we can measure and show dealers right away. So the collaborative part of this tool is, and I'll use the in-store aspect of the tool, is that when a consumer comes in and they get to the step of the process where they want to evaluate their trade, I always like to remind people that this is a really important piece of the transaction to the consumer, because they are making the decision to sell you their car at this point. So they truly are in control of this, and they need to feel like they have a lot of control of this process. If you want that customer to be satisfied and excited about their experience at your store, they can't feel like somebody is trying to steal the car from them or give them a number without any kind of support in terms of the value of that vehicle. So this tool was designed to be a collaborative process between a salesperson that they're already building a relationship with, but over the phone and throughout the process of selecting their new vehicle. When it comes to the point where they evaluate their trade-in, it isn't, let me take your keys and throw them to the used car manager. He drives it around the block, writes down the number on a piece of paper that you're not happy with. I give it to you, and we have that awkward silence. It's designed so that there's a conversation that happens. And typically this is done on an iPad. This can be done on a smartphone. This could be done on a desktop as well. But typically we see it done successfully on an iPad because it's a bigger screen. So the customer and the dealership employee walk around the vehicle. Customer gets to rate different aspects of their car. These are all customizable for the dealer, but I'll use some examples. So, how are the tires on this vehicle? A 0 would be they're completely bald, they're flat. A 10 would be they're brand new. How would you rate your tires on your vehicle? Well, I think I'd give them about a 7. Okay, great. I agree with you. It's a 7. Let's put it down. How is the exterior condition of the vehicle? A 0 is it's been in a wreck, and a 10 is it's brand new, no dents, dings, and scratches. Well, you know what? I hit a shopping cart right here, and there's a little scuff right here. Okay, great. So we'll give this one a 7 as well. That sounds good. And you can get the point how you go through different aspects of the vehicle, and the consumer gets to rate their vehicle typically on a 1 to 10 scale. And then after that's done, the information is submitted to the pricing and appraisal inventory management system that the dealer uses. In most of our cases, it's our tools that it's submitted through, and the used car manager or whoever is determining the final appraisal number gets all of the information, runs it against NADA, Black Book, KBB, market values, whatever's there. Information is submitted back for a final appraisal, and it's presented to the consumer. So I'll use 2 examples. So you'll have all of the information, a recap for the consumer. And this is where we pull in our market data and our vehicle option and package data as well to say, we want to make sure that this is the exact right vehicle. We lay out all those high value options and packages, not just this is a 2016 Honda Accord. We actually show them, here's all the options and packages on your vehicle. This is the correct vehicle, Mr. and Mrs. Customer. Yep, that's correct. So here's the rating that you gave your car. Overall, you gave your car an 8 out of 10. So if we look at the book values, here's Kelly Blue Book, here's NADA. You take a look at it, and whatever the higher value is, you say, so you rated your car 80% or 8 out of 10. So if we look at this, 8% of this book value would be the value that you assign for your vehicle, and here's the number. And what we found over time is that customers feel excited about it because it makes sense. They understand where their vehicle sits in the market. They understand why their vehicle isn't that exact book number that maybe they saw online before they came in. And they feel comfortable that they're the ones that assign this vehicle versus somebody else at the dealership. And what we found is that dealers are taking in these trades, in many cases, north of $300 less than what they've historically taken in those trades at before. So it's a good tool that helps dealers create some more margin in an industry where margins are shrinking every day. And it also helps with, customer satisfaction. So there's some intangibles that actually come into play here as well. That get people excited about the process. So it's had great success already, and we see a lot of continued success going forward.
Now, Mike, obviously people are interested not just in a showroom tool, and I love the fact that it's adding additional growth. What's the roadmap of getting that, user-friendly technology online?
So that's a great question, Brian. I'll kind of give you a bit of an overview of what our methodology is in terms of how we develop tools at Max and why we develop them that way, and that'll paint a good, clear picture of the roadmap. So we really believe that in order for digital retailing tools in any part of the process to be successful, you need to really look at it like a change management exercise and get the people in the store comfortable with the tool and the experience before you marry that up with a version of it online that the consumer goes through on their own. So we will be releasing a web version of this tool where the consumer can go through this process on their own. And then the process is really seamless. So when somebody comes in, it's more of a verification. A lot of these steps have been done already. But then the people in the store, especially the customer-facing salespeople in the store, are very familiar with how the process works online. And then it's very seamless. So it isn't, there's a trade estimator online that a customer gets a range or a value of their car, and then they come in and then they get a value that's not even within that range because there wasn't good communication between the web tool and the process in the store. So that's coming up in the near future, and we've got a lot of really exciting, true omni-channel tools that we're going to be releasing throughout the next year here. But we put a lot of time, effort, and energy into really ensuring we get it right. And we do a lot of consumer research to ensure that the tools we design are not just good ideas, but they're ideas that the consumer would want to use, would be intuitive to the consumer, and then would fit well into a process or a workflow within the dealership as well.
That's great. That's great. Well, I will tell you that technology itself will not change any experience for consumers without solid processes. So I like the approach of working out the details in the showroom and then bring it online compared to the other way around, throwing some tool on the site, setting some high expectation, and the dealer's not prepared to create that same experience in the showroom. Mike, let's take a pivot for a moment. As you look at the industry and the future of automotive retail, what's the thing that gets you, the most excited that your team can help dealers solve? We've talked about a few things, but obviously you know that there's a lot of bumps on the road to the sale that consumers have expressed a dissatisfaction with. And this whole series is talking about what's the future look like. If you had to take out your crystal ball and look at what may be the next big opportunity for MaxDigital to provide value to its customers, what do you see out there? What are you looking forward to diving into?
Another great question there, Brian. So I think at the crux of all this is just the fact to be able to make buying a car fun and exciting for consumers again. I grew up in the car business. My dad was in the car business, and I didn't know that it was a quote unquote a bad industry to be in from the masses perspective, and that there was all these negative perceptions to it because I had a really honest, ethical dad who ran a great dealership and who everybody loved and helped a ton of people out. And I always looked at buying cars and selling cars as a really fun, exciting process for people. So, as you grow older and more experienced in the business and you read all the research that's out there and you see how painful this process has been historically for so many people, I think to solve that problem and to make it fun and exciting for consumers to buy a car again, I think that not only helps solve a problem for a consumer, but it helps solve the turnover problems in the industry as well, because people don't want to do a job they don't feel good about. They don't feel like they're solving a problem. They don't feel like they're helping people every day. Just inherently, that's something that very few people are motivated and excited about doing. But when you can really feel like you're helping, you're educating consumers, and you're making it a seamless, smooth process, I think that's something that everybody can get excited about. So, our tools and what we're working on for the rest of this year are going down a direction that's really going to help make this truly an easier process, a more exciting and fun process for consumers. And we're doing it in a manner that's going to make dealerships a lot more profitable as well. And that's something that we believe at our core is that you can provide really quality software, but it doesn't have to be for a really high premium. And I think right now there's some great software that's out there for dealers, but in the infancy that we're in right now of the stage of digital retailing, I think not a lot of people are excited to write that check. So we're trying to provide everything that we do at a really good value for our dealers as well, so that they can run a profitable business. Because in the world where they're getting squeezed everywhere, there needs to be some relief in sight, and we're trying to help provide that to our dealers.
I'm looking forward to the journey that we can see this together, because no one has a clear vision on how long it's going to take. What are some of the key trigger points that are getting more dealers engaged at looking at simple things like their merchandising or their trade process, let alone transparent pricing? One of the challenges I see is developing some type of tools that address dealers' concern with map pricing, where they can't or do not want to show their low price without getting two-way communication, which is kind of digital retailing in reverse, because everything else, obviously we go online, we can see a clear selling price, but also the idea of what to do with addendums. I've brought this up a few times, but when I did go in to pick up my Honda, although I wasn't upsold on the products that were listed on the addendum, because I knew I was basically a serious shopper and wanted to get the deal done. But none of the digital retailing tools, even the merchandising tools, Michael, show any of the the pinstriping or the window tinting or the nitro fill. And some dealers put those on cars, and the first time they're ever shown to a consumer is when they're ready to buy the car.
I'm so happy that you brought that up, Brian, because there's something that we're releasing in the next month, which does a really good job of helping highlight these throughout the merchandising process. So everything from, we talk about the high value options and packages that are on a vehicle that make it unique and make it worth more money than a vehicle down the street. But oftentimes we do neglect the investments that dealers make into some of the things like you mentioned, on top of, new tires or new brakes, window tinting, all these things that go in to increase the value of that car. There historically hasn't been a good way to merchandise those efficiently, right? Other than hand writing them in, so to speak, or hand typing them into a description field in a vehicle. So we're integrating that not only into the description piece to add value to that unique vehicle, but also to our digital showroom tool, so that when you look at that vehicle online, it is this really enhanced VDP that outlines all of these things clearly for the consumer. And then you make your salespeople and your BDCs instant product experts, so that when this consumer is shopping for a vehicle, not only can they answer the questions, is this the right vehicle for me, but they can help tip it over the edge to say, and this vehicle is just reconditioned, and we pinstriped it or tinted the windows, whatever it may be, but we added an extra X amount of dollars in value to this vehicle. So now you do what I like to say is decommoditize your vehicle. In a world where I can buy thousands of 2016 Honda Accords across the country, how are you decommoditizing your vehicle and making it unique so that somebody's excited to buy that vehicle from you?
Well, I would love to see that product when it comes out, because, again, the addendum is just the reversal of price transparency. I know dealers are struggling to price their cars right to make a profit. I understand that. And I understand in some markets, the same OEM brand dealers are attacking each other, pushing everyone down to a lowest price model. So I understand the need, but I will say that more sophisticated consumers, when they walk in and see $1,500 or $2,000 worth of additional things that were never disclosed online or through a detailed digital retailing tool, as kind of highly recommended or implied installed, it really creates a bad experience in my mind. And I'm glad that you've addressed it. Michael, in the coming days, as you are releasing more and more products and have some great tools that are available right now to transform a dealer's merchandising, what's the best place for someone listening to today's show to get more information on your products?
Dealers can always visit www.maxdigital.com, but I always like to share my personal cell phone number and my email address with everybody, because I love to hear feedback, whether it's from a current customer, whether it's from a new customer with an ask that they may have that somebody else couldn't accommodate for them. So dealers can reach me at mcavanaugh@maxdigital.com, and my mobile number is 586-255-0036. And again, I welcome any calls from anybody that has great feedback, questions, anything.
Great. Well, Michael, thank you for your time today. For those of you who are listening to today's podcast, this is one of a series of 20 interviews with digital retailing thought leaders and innovators who are all working to create a modern retail experience to make it easier, faster, and simpler for a consumer to shop online and get most of the work done so their time in the dealership is, well, more focused on the fun things like test drives and going over their new vehicles' features. If you have not listened to the whole series, you can go to iTunes under podcasts and just search for the Pash On podcast, or you can go to brianpash.libsyn, LIBSYN.com. We look forward to covering digital retailing in the coming months. Michael, once again, thank you for being on the show and for being really a pioneer on this idea of without a clear, fully described product, a consumer can't make their purchase decision online. I look forward to sharing another podcast with my listeners in the days ahead. Remember, every Monday we release a new podcast. So I'll see you next week on another podcast session.